The silence stretched like a blade across the dinner table. Maya's fork clinked against her plate as she avoided my eyes, while Dad's heavy breathing filled the space between us. I just asked a simple question. Why wasn't I invited to the family reunion I'd been funding for 3 years? Fix this. Ryan. Dad's voice cut through the air like broken glass. Be a man for once. How dare you beg for handouts while stabbing me in the back? His face flushed crimson. I think you're some financial genius. Fine. Christmas is done. Wait for my lawyer's call. I almost smiled. Perfect. Maya's text arrived before dawn. Ryan, we need to talk. Please. I let it sit unanswered. 5 hours later, I'm serious. They're losing it. Mom won't stop crying. Dad's having panic attacks. I didn't mean what I said. By evening, my phone was a war zone. 23 missed calls. Then an unknown number left a voicemail. Ryan. This is Attorney Davidson, representing your parents. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Let's resolve this amicably. I deleted it and slept better than I had in years. The coffee shop downtown became my sanctuary until I saw Mom's Facebook post. Even those closest to you can betray everything. We gave him the world. But some people only know how to destroy. The comments were vicious. People I hadn't seen in years called me a parasite. A snake. Ungrateful. Maya's comment was the knife twist. We sacrificed everything for him. He threw it all away. My blood turned to ice. Just like when they canceled my birthday because Maya had a headache. Or when Dad borrowed $5,000 for house repairs and blew it in Atlantic City. Years of paying their bills while they posted family photos without me. I finished my coffee, opened Facebook, and typed, "Sometimes family is just people who use you. I refuse to be used anymore." Maya's instant reply, "Really, you're making this public? Classy." Mom chimed in, "I don't even recognize you anymore." Instead of arguing, I uploaded a carefully curated folder payment screenshots with amounts and dates visible, but personal account numbers blurred out. Bank transfer confirmations. Their own text messages begging for money. Hit share. The tide turned in minutes. Wait. Is this real? They told everyone you abandoned them. Holy shit. This is insane. Ryan. We had no idea. Mom's profile vanished within the hour. But my phone exploded. 42 missed calls became 60. Then 87. Desperate voicemails. Screaming matches. Sobbing pleas. Dad's final message was barely a whisper. You can't destroy us like this. Please. Son. I saved it and walked away, letting them drown in their own truth. They thought it was over, that their lawyer's empty threats and Mom's crocodile tears would break me like always. But they didn't know this version of me. I chose Murphy's Diner on the edge of town for our meeting. Neutral ground, corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. They didn't know I'd brought backup. At exactly 6 p.m., they shuffled in. Dad. Mom. And Maya, looking like refugees from their own lies. Dad's jaw was cement. Mom clutched her purse like armor. Maya hid behind designer sunglasses in a dimly lit diner. Ryan. We can fix this. Dad started. His voice strained. We're family. I leaned back. Arms crossed. Funny. Last I heard, Christmas was canceled, and I'd be hearing from your lawyer. Mom reached for me with trembling fingers. We were angry. We said things. You lied about me. I cut her off. Publicly. Made me look like a monster, while bleeding me dry. You did this to yourself. Maya muttered behind her shades. You aired our dirty laundry. I aired it. I leaned forward. When Dad posted, I was a spoiled brat. Or when you laughed at the comments. Or when you all went to Cabo without me and plastered it all over Instagram. Dad's face went nuclear. Enough with the victim act. We came to fix this. But if you want to keep being selfish. Exactly. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Their voices filled the diner. Dad's venom. If you won't help family, don't come crawling back when you need us. Maya's manipulation. Ryan. I'm totally screwed. They'll shut off my card. You're the only one who cares. Mom went ghost white. Maya's jaw dropped. You used me. Lied about me. And now you're here because you're terrified. I said, my voice steel. Not because you love me. Because you need me. Before Mom could start her sob story, I slid a thick folder across the table. Mortgage document. Payment records. All bearing my name as cosigner and primary payer. The house mortgage is in both our names. I said quietly. I've filed legal papers to remove myself as cosigner. Without my income and credit backing the loan. You'll need to refinance within 6 months or face foreclosure proceedings. Dad grabbed the folder with shaking hands. You can't just. This will take time to sort out. 6 months? I repeated. That's what the bank gave you. Should be enough time to figure out your finances. You're destroying your own family. Maya screamed, ripping off her sunglasses. Tears streaked her makeup. Family. I laughed bitterly. The family that wrote about me like garbage, that lied to everyone about me, that only calls when they need money. Dad slammed his fist on the table. I'll sue you into the ground. You ungrateful sue me, go ahead. Let's talk about the $5,000 you stole for Vegas. Or the $3,000 Maya borrowed for medical bills and spent at Nordstrom. Or how you told everyone I bought you that SUV when you financed it yourself and defaulted. Maya's face crumbled. You weren't supposed to track that. There's a lot I wasn't supposed to know. Like how you poisoned Aunt Sarah against me. Calling me unstable. Please. Mom whispered. Broken. We can fix this. We're family. I smiled and nodded toward the entrance. No. Mom, we're not. Grandpa Joe walked in tall, silver-haired, sharp as a blade. His cane tapped against the floor as he approached our booth. Well? His voice was Arctic calm. Still destroying yourselves. I see Dad went pale. Pop. I didn't know you were. You never know anything. That's your problem. Grandpa's eyes found mine. Ryan told me everything. The money. The lies. The manipulation. You always thought you were the smartest person in every room. Dad. Listen, I'm done listening. Grandpa's voice could have shattered glass. The family trust has been under review for months. After seeing Ryan's evidence and witnessing your behavior tonight, I'm making him the primary beneficiary. You'll receive nothing. Maya gasped and started hyperventilating. I watched you poison this family for years. Grandpa continued, his voice like Judgment Day. I've been planning this intervention for months, waiting for the right moment. Ryan finally showed me the truth I needed to see. He turned to me, his expression softening. I should have stepped in sooner. Son. I nodded, throat tight. Thanks, Grandpa. As we stood to leave, Dad's voice cracked like breaking bones. Ryan. Please. We're family. I looked back one last time. You made sure I wasn't family a long time ago. But I wasn't finished. I thought they'd accept defeat. Retreat quietly. I underestimated their desperation. My phone became a weapon the next morning. Calls like Adder one. Texts. Voicemails from all three of them. I ignored everything until the doorbell rang. Grandpa stood on my doorstep, walked past me without a word, and sat at my kitchen table. They're imploding, he said with grim satisfaction. Your father called me 6 times. Says I'm destroying the family legacy. I snorted. Rich. Coming from him. Grandpa studied me. I never thought I'd say this. But I'm proud of you. You finally stood up to them. I didn't do it for revenge. I said, I just couldn't be their ATM anymore. The phone buzzed another voicemail. I played it on speaker. Son, this has gone too far. We're your blood. You can't just abandon us. Your mother hasn't eaten in days. Maya won't leave her room. You've humiliated us. Come back. Don't destroy what's left of this family. Grandpa shook his head. He's more worried about losing control than losing you. 2 weeks of peace followed. No desperate calls. No manipulation. For the first time in years, I lived for myself quiet mornings. Coffee by the window. And freedom from their chaos. Then Maya called from an unknown number. Just 5 minutes. She pleaded. I'm at the coffee shop near your place. Something in her voice made me curious. She looked like hell when I arrived, red eyes. Hollow cheeks. Defeated posture. You look like death. I said bluntly. I feel like it. She stared into her cup. I've been thinking about everything. How we treated you. It was wrong. Only took you losing everything to figure that out. No. She whispered. I knew the whole time. I just didn't care because you always fixed everything. Her hands shook as she spoke. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. Dad applied for loans, but his credit's destroyed. Mom blames me for everything. Says if I hadn't been so selfish, you wouldn't have left. And now you want forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. Tears fell into her coffee. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I studied her broken expression. You know what the worst part was? I wanted to help. But nothing was ever enough. You always demanded more. And when I stopped, you acted like I'd betrayed you. You're right. I thought you'd always be there. No matter what. Not anymore. She nodded, standing to leave. I'll stay away. I just needed to say that. Maya? She turned. I'm surprised. Fix your own life. Stop expecting others to solve your problems. You're 30 years old. That night, Grandpa called with an update. Your father's still playing the victim. Tells everyone you'll come to your senses. That you're just being dramatic. I laughed. He really can't accept it's over. Never will. But that's not your problem anymore. As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. The game was over. The truth was out. I'd found my freedom. And I was never going back. Story 2. You're old enough to figure it out, said my own father, who then left with his new wife and her children. I waited to contact my grandma as I sat on the chilly bench. She showed there with attorneys a few hours later. His home was vacant, and his bank accounts were frozen when he returned from his vacation. My name is Mia, and I was 14 years old when my father took me to Central Station. Left me there on a chilly metal bench by alone, with just a shabby rucksack and $20 in my possession. He then went with his new family, while he shared pictures from a lavish resort partying with the people who mattered most. I waited for him to return for 6 hours, watching trains leave for places I couldn't afford, unaware that the grandmother he had denied me access to was worth $80 million, or that the useless daughter he had left behind would receive $10 million when she turned 18. He believed he was throwing away a burden. The money he lost and the 18-year term are not the things that torment him the most from his jail cell. It's realizing that I was freed by his treachery. There had always been a lot of unsaid things in the air in Dad's automobile. Today, however, it was like breathing through damp wool, for what I didn't realize would be the last time. I pushed my face against the cold passenger glass and watched the familiar streets of our neighborhood speed by, with the necessities I had brought for what Dad had obliquely characterized as a quick trip to settle things out. My battered backpack nestled between my feet. Will we be back before Monday? Dad, I inquired, attempting to break the stillness that had been between us ever since he had come to get me that morning from my mother's apartment. That history presentation is with me. Do you recall that Civil War project I've been working on for weeks? On the steering wheel? His knuckles became white. Mia, you'll figure it out. I felt a chill go down my spine at his tone. This wasn't the dad who cut out cardboard components for my third-grade solar system model at midnight and helped me with school assignments. Since being married to Sharon 6 months ago, he had changed into this stranger. But simply take a moment to stop talking. Dad. All right. I must think. I tasted the bitter coffee I'd snatched at Mom's before he got there and gulped hard. With empty wine bottles forming a glass city on the coffee table, she had once again fallen asleep on the sofa. When Dad had came to retrieve me, and he had mumbled something about, no wonder, while glaring at her with such hatred. With its clock tower and red brick exterior, the train station loomed ahead. Like a scene from an old film. Dad didn't even check the parking lot before pulling into the drop-off area. My stomach turned over. Even as he opened the trunk, I said, "Aren't you coming in with me?" He had already exited the vehicle, dragging my luggage from the rear with needless effort. My legs felt wobbly on the street as I scurried to follow. My lightweight jacket was sliced by the November wind. I looked homeless throughout Thanksgiving dinner because of the one Sharon mentioned. Dad shoved the bag at me and said, "Here?" His gaze kept flitting to his watch. Then to the station door. "Mia, you're old enough to think things out. You're 14. Try to figure it out. You haven't even informed me destination." Dad. Or I saw them at that time. With her well-groomed hand resting on her daughter Brittany's shoulder, Sharon stood just inside the station's glass doors. Like her mother. Brittany was a 1-2-year-old blonde who wore the type of fancy coats I only dreamed of in shop displays. Connor, Sharon's 8-year-old son, was distracted with his phone game and not paying attention to anything else. I looked at Sharon, who grinned. She had practiced her icy, victorious grin in mirrors when she believed no one was watching. "Dad," I said in a little, breakable voice, without turning around, and he was already moving in their direction. He kissed Sharon's face and put his hand around her waist, drawing her closer. Connor paused his game long enough for Dad to give his hair the same loving ruffle he used to give mine. "Dad," I yelled more loudly, terror rising like floodwater in my throat. "Dad, you haven't given me a ticket. Or money." "Dad." I got a worried glance from an old lady carrying a luggage. A gray-suited guy walked past me, his body language displaying annoyance. "Dad." However, didn't look back. He led the way to the exit with his new family. Brittany once gave me a look in return that might have been either pity or delight. Then they vanished. With my rucksack on my shoulders, I remained still in the center of the crowded station, observing the location where they vanished. This was not taking place. This was not possible. Dad would return through those doors any moment now, giggling about what a horrible prank this had been. Any moment now. However, a minute's passed in between the seconds. 5120. A station guard walked measuredly toward me, his clothing ironed and clean. "Are you waiting for someone?" "Young lady, my dad." I replied without thinking. He just overlooked something. "I'll be right back." Behind wire-rimmed spectacles, the guard's brown, compassionate eyes took in my bag and my terrified face. The way my eyes were fixed on the door. "While you wait, would you want to take a seat? Over there are benches." Unconfident in my voice, I nodded and walked to a chilly metal seat beside the ticket windows. As I sat, the bag sagged next to me, and I eventually took a close look inside. $20 to laugh. A crumpled $20 cash in the front pocket that I had been saving from babysitting gigs. To a hairbrush. My phone charger. A change of clothing. And the history textbook I had been using for my presentation. I had nothing else. All around me, The station was busy. Families getting back together. People in business hurrying to catch trains. Groups of teenagers laughing. There was some place for everyone to go. Someone was anticipating them. Everybody except me. When I dropped my phone last month, it cracked. And my dad stated it wasn't worth mending. Displayed 347 p.m. I went through my contacts and browsed. Every name is a little letdown. Mom would remain intoxicated till tomorrow at the latest, together with her family and the other students from school. My best friend Emma was on holiday in Florida. I couldn't call from a train station sobbing, since we weren't near enough. Then I noticed it. I had almost erased this contact a dozen times, but was never able to. Dad's mother, Grandma Helen, whom he had severed 2 years before, after a dispute about money and interference that I had never quite understood. Before things went apart, my grandma would teach me card games on rainy Saturdays and make me cookies from scratch. I was reminded that I had missed lunch by the rumbling in my tummy. I opened the granola bar I had discovered in the side pocket of my backpack, likely from last week's school field trip, and ate it carefully to make it last, since I was too anxious about this enigmatic journey to eat. 4:15 p.m. The high windows were already beginning to let in the early darkness of November. At midnight, the station would shut. Then where would I go? I felt like I may hurl up the granola bar at the idea of spending the night on the streets. A family passed by. 3 children. Their parents. And a chain around their hands. The youngest, who could have been 5, was weeping because she was exhausted. She grinned through her tears as her father picked her up and placed her on his shoulders. At that point, I broke. At first, the tears were quiet. Simply hot streams running down my cheeks that I wiped away right immediately. But then I let out a sob as my chest heaved to make myself as tiny as possible on the seat. I brought my knees up to my chest and sobbed into my pants. A soft voice said, Miss, are you all right?" When I glanced up, I saw a lady in her 70 seconds with a purple coat and a cup of coffee from the station cafe. Uninvited. She took a seat next to me. Near enough to be consoling, but not too enough to be bothersome. My father abandoned me. He just left me here. I heard myself remark. Hair expression stiffnel. Say to necht. How old are you? Sweetheart. She took her phone out. I'm calling the police. This is no, to our surprise. I took her hand. Please. I have someone I can call first. My granny. I just haven't spoken to her in a long time. After examining me for a while, the lady called her. Now, as I sat here with you, me fingers trembling, I discovered Grandma Helen's number once again. Once, twice, and 3 times it rang. I was ready to end the call when she said, Hello. Her voice was just as I remembered it, firm but warm, like velvet and old whiskey. My voice broke. Grandma, Mia is here. A sudden gasp for air. What's wrong? Mia, my love, you're where I was dropped off at the train station by Dad. He took Sharon and her children in his car, and he left me here without a ticket or any money. And I'm at a loss on what to do. And halt? Like a scalpel through butter. Her speech sliced through my apprehension. At which rail station? Central Station? Downtown? Right now? Are you safe? Are you being bothered by anyone? No. I'm seated next to a kind woman. Excellent. You remain there. Stay put. Don't bring anybody along. I'll be there to pick you up, but it's at least 2 hours. Grandma, in 90 minutes, I'll be there. I'm going with a few buddies. Legal companions. You just remain where you are and keep secure. Could you help me with that, indeed? And it's not your fault. Mia, this is not your fault. Regardless of what your father said, or whatever that guy said. The line died. The purple-clad lady was still at my side, giving me a little shoulder squeeze. Your grandma? I gave a nod. Excellent. At home? I couldn't get the term out of my head. Grandma's home was the last place I had visited before the altercation with Dad. I recalled it as a simple, 2-story suburban home, with a kitchen that usually smelled like something was baking and a garden she took great care of. However, we weren't going to the suburbs. The vehicle sailed past areas of the city that I had only ever seen through the windows of buses. With old homes set back from the road, the streets are lined with trees. In the dark, their windows glowed brightly. Where are we going? Grandma home, she said again. Her voice had a certain quality. However, a satisfied tone, perhaps even confirmation. A pair of iron gates opened automatically when the automobile turned through them. Our approach is detected by motion sensors. The road wound through well-kept lawns that were softly illuminated by landscape lights. The home comes next. No. There was the estate. What is this location? I took a breath. My current residence is here. There are things about your family, about our family, that your father never wanted you to know. Grandma remarked plainly. The home had large windows, a circular driveway with a fountain in the center, and 3 levels of brick and stone. It resembled a scene from a film about hidden groups and ancient money. We got out of the automobile with Mr. Pross, Chin's assistance. By morning, I'll have the first documentation ready. The emergency custody application is already underway. Mrs. Hartley. James. Thank you. Let's talk over breakfast. The home was much more daunting inside. The walls, which seemed to belong in museums, and lack a sweeping staircase and marble flooring. Immediately, a lady in a clean uniform emerged. Greetings from home. Mrs. Hartley. Should I get Miss Mia's blue room ready? Indeed. Rosa. And in half an hour, please send supper to the family dining room. Something reassuring. Maybe your delicious chicken soup? Yes. Ma'am. Grandma took me to a smaller, but still smaller, dining area in the home. A table for 8 and a chandelier that created rainbow patterns on the walls were still necessary in this situation. She poured me a drink of what seemed to be freshly squeezed orange juice, and herself a glass of wine. She sat opposite from me and remarked, I assume you have questions? Adding, this isn't the home I remember. She took a drink of wine and said, No. That was the house I moved to after your grandfather died, when I was pretending to be someone I'm not. Trying to be small enough, poor enough, that your father wouldn't feel threatened. It was unsuccessful. Evanyet. He interrupted me as soon as I questioned his decisions. However, how is all of this my spouse? Your grandpa wasn't the straightforward insurance salesman your father claimed to be. Robert started a business from nothing and expanded it into an empire. He put everything in a very precise trust structure when he passed away 5 years ago. And your father has been attempting to violate it ever since. Rosa showed in with bowls of heaven-scented soup and still steaming warm bread. It wasn't until I began eating that I realized how hungry I was. Your father's fortune was given to him right away. She went on. $5 million. Free and clear. It should have been enough to set him up for life. To provide for you. To build something meaningful. $5 million. My soup almost choked me. He spent it instead. Poor investments. Living beyond even those significant resources. And attempting to win over individuals like Sharon and her country club acquaintances. He approached me once the funds were out, requesting access to the remaining trust and additional money, the remainder at the time of his death. Your grandpa was valued at around $80 million. The spoon clattered on the bowl, as it fell out of my grasp. Most of it is held in trust. Others are for me. Others are for charity. And a sizable amount, $10 million, is for you. It will be accessible when you reach 18 or sooner, depending on your schooling, for example, or if your legal guardians ever abandoned you or put you in danger. Dad is aware of this. Yes, indeed. Since the reading of the will, he has been recognized. He tried to persuade courts that I'm senile and that he would be a better manager of the money for 3 years in an attempt to get power of attorney over your trust. Her grin was piercing. He didn't think I would fight back. I never thought I would have documented his efforts so meticulously. Did he cut you off for that reason? Because you refused to hand my money to him? In part, but partly because I began to inquire about you. Were you receiving the right care? If you were really receiving the money he said he needed for your costs? She grabbed my hand from across the table. When he stopped allowing me to visit you 6 months ago, I hired a private investigator. I was aware of Sharon prior to the announcement of their wedding? I was aware of the debts he was concealing. I was aware that he was feigning to go to work every day after being dismissed. She gave my hand a squeeze. I had no idea or expectation that he would leave you in this manner. She showed me the blue room upstairs after supper. It had its own bathroom and a window seat with a view of the gardens. And it was 3 times as big as my bedroom in my mother's apartment. Somehow, there were brand new pajamas in my size, spread out on the bed. Grandma saw my astonishment and said, "Rosa has a talent for these things. The closet has further clothing. Tomorrow, we'll go shopping properly." I don't get it. Grandma, why didn't you inform me of this earlier? Abruptly. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at all 70,000 feet. 3 years have passed. It was forbidden by your father, and I had to exercise caution while he was in detention. He would have completely vanished with you if you had made a mistake. I've been waiting, assembling proof, and getting ready for the day. He committed a grave enough error that no court would support him. Her eyes became stony. I just never imagined that his error would be that heinous. She took an old envelope with yellowed edges out of her pocket. "It's for you. Before he passed away. Your grandpa wrote it with the directive that you should have it when you were old enough to comprehend." The front had my name in poor handwriting. The letter was dated within a month of his passing. If you are reading this, my lovely Mia, you are old enough to see that family is complex, that love and money may become entangled in unflattering ways, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us end up being the ones who need to protect us. Even though I am leaving this world, I know that I have done all in my power to ensure your future. There is more to the money I left you than simply cash. It's liberty. The ability to continue your studies debt-free. The ability to take chances in your work. The ability to escape circumstances that don't benefit you. I adore your father, who is also my son. But I am aware of his flaws. I was unable to sleep after seeing someone mistake riches for labor. My thoughts were racing as I sat in the window seat and gazed out at the moonlit gardens. All of my assumptions about my family and our circumstances had been false. We weren't having any trouble. Bad luck did not befall Dad. He had thrown everything away after having had everything. He would now also discard me. It buzzed on my phone. Instagram's notice. I opened it against my better judgment. They were there. Connor, Brittany, Dad, and Sharon, at what seemed to be a resort restaurant. Everyone smiled. The caption, "Family Getaway. Creating memories with the people that are most important to you." Red heart. Posted 1 hour ago, while sat in a train station, feeling scared and alone. He had been toasting with his new family. The people that really count. Before I could change my mind, I yelled and fired at it. After that, I shut off my phone and started crying. This time, the tears were ones of anger rather than fear or abandonment. The next 2 weeks flew by, filled with tutors, attorneys, and change. Grandma had put together what she referred to as the team. In addition to legal advice, there was a whole network of assistants to help mend the damage my father had caused. Stance. Miss Catherine reprimanded me by placing a hard but loving touch on my shoulder. You've been minimizing yourself for a very long time. You've lost the ability to occupy space. Grandma had suggested the etiquette and confidence coach. She had promised to give you tools, not to alter who you are. The world that awaits us. Légale de position. Courtrooms. And sometimes, the media. There are rules to the game, so that you may decide whether to abide by and when to breach those regulations. I want you to be aware of them. I was learning how to sit in a chair, like I deserved to be there from Miss Catherine. How to talk such that people had to listen, and how to look someone in the eye without flinching. My body was speaking as loudly as my words. And it was like learning a new language. I crossed the room again with my shoulders back. And she responded, "Better. Remember, you're not trying to be someone else." I met with Dr. Place Reeves, a therapist who specialized in adolescent trauma. In the afternoons, his office was organized especially for these sessions in the east wing of the house. "I don't want you to think I'm weak," I told him during our third session. "Needing help isn't weakness. Your father left you at a railroad station. Mia, that treachery would be difficult for most adults to handle. It takes amazing strength to be here. Working through it, the station is still a part of my dreams. I confess to waiting for him to return. Would you want him to reappear in your dreams?" I considered it. "No. I want him to realize that I don't need him to return." "Doctor," Reeves gave a little grin. "That is a significant change in viewpoint." The most difficult aspect was the legal preparation. Grandma referred to the first-floor conference room, where boxes of paperwork littered every surface, as the war room, which Mr. Chin and his group had taken over. Emails, texts, financial information, and even postings on social media. It was 3 months ago. One of the younger attorneys, Miss Rodriguez, gave me a printed exchange of emails because, quote, "The kid is worth $10 million at 18, and I'm not letting that slip away. Your father made it clear to your mother that he was taking full custody. The child doesn't even know my name. Can we make use of this?" I inquired. "Oh, yes, Mr. Chin answered contentedly. "This demonstrates a definite financial incentive for both the desertion and the custody request. It's obvious." Ms. Rodriguez concluded. But establishing our case wasn't the only thing we did. One evening, when we were going over financial figures, Grandma said, "I understand every aspect of what was happening. Knowledge is power. Your father kept you ignorant, because ignorance made you vulnerable. Never again. As a result, I studied financial fraud, custody law, trust funds, and fiduciary obligation. When I was 12, I found out that my father had opened credit cards in my name, accruing debt that Grandma's attorneys were now trying to resolve. I found out that he had been setting the foundation for a plan for months by telling others that I was problematic and challenging. I didn't comprehend yet. I thought he was going to label me incompetent. One day, I questioned Mr. Chin. He intended to attempt to get permanent control of my trust after I became 18. Grandma and Mr. Chin looked at each other. He answered, "We believe so." Yes. With caution. Once again, the anger that had been building since that night at the station erupted. For financial gain, he was going to ruin my whole existence. Grandma added that he had previously shown that he was incapable of handling money appropriately. If his spending habits had persisted, the $10 million would have been spent in 2 years. We learned that Dad had received paperwork at the resort 3 weeks after the abandonment. It had been recorded by someone As he read the paperwork, he threw them on the floor and yelled at the process server about harassment and resentful elderly ladies who are unable to keep their own affairs in check. His expression changed from one of arrogant indifference to one of real horror in a matter of hours. The video became viral. Grandma watched it grimly with pleasure and murmured, "Good. Let the world see his true self." The next month was designated as the court date. Dad either borrowed against future expectations or persuaded Sharon to contribute to his defense by hiring a costly legal team. In a countermovement, his attorney said that Grandma had abducted me and was abusing a helpless youngster. Let them come. Mr. Chin said with assurance. Everything, even the train station security film, is recorded. Dad wasn't going down without a fight. So he launched his own campaign, calling extended family members with his version of events. He claimed that I had been violently out of control with Sharon's children, and that he had just been taking me to a therapeutic boarding school when I had run away at the station. Oh, yes. Crystal clear. Him walking away while you call after him. You're sitting alone for hours. Very compelling evidence. Grandma said. Block them all. Their opinions don't matter. Only the truth matters. But the truth was turning into a weapon of its own. The family split into factions, and my phone was inundated with messages that ranged from support to condemnation. When they divorced, Dad's business partners came forward with stories of unpaid loans and broken contracts. Brittany's teacher reached out, worried about behavioral changes since the marriage, and willing to testify about bruises she'd noticed. Miss Rodriguez learned that Sharon's first husband had filed similar complaints about financial manipulation. One evening, after reviewing the evidence, I remarked, "He's not just a bad father. He's a bad person." "Yes," Grandma answered plainly. And it's time the world knew it. The local news carried the story first, followed by the national media. An abandoned teen fights back against father's betrayal. They didn't mention my name. Dad's wasn't protected by any minor legislation. Sharon's wasn't either. In real time, their idyllic family image fell apart. Friends from Sharon's country club turned away. Brittany and Connor's continued attendance at the private school was questioned. They were really prohibited from going back to the resort, where they had been partying while I sat. 2 days before to the first hearing, Dad made one attempt to contact me. Grandma had told me that he may, so I braced myself. "Mia. My dear." He spoke in a different tone, beseeching. "Despérate. All of this has been a major miscommunication. I would never. You know, I was left at a train station by you, with no money, no ticket, and no plan." I interrupted, my voice solid from weeks of practice with Miss Catherine. I was returning. I just had to. An hour later, you shared pictures from your trip, creating memories with the people who are most important to you. There was silence, then a sharpening of his voice. "You don't have the right to do this to my life. Mine was already wrecked by you." I took pride in my serene voice. The difference is that without you, I will rebuild more effectively. You're a bit ungrateful. I ended the call. Even though my hands were trembling, I had succeeded. I had turned my back on him. The first court date came sooner than anticipated. Grandma got me a new clothing that was age-appropriate and professional, nothing that might be seen too childish or too grown-up. I had received courtroom etiquette coaching from Miss Catherine. Doctor, nothing actually prepared me for seeing my father across the aisle in that courtroom. Even though Reeves had helped me prepare for the emotional effect, somehow, he seemed smaller. The dark lines beneath his eyes and the weight he had lost were visible, despite his pricey suit. Sharon sat behind him, her pinched face barely covered by her flawless makeup. He repeatedly shook her away as she continued to talk frantically to him. The bailiff yelled, "All rise." And the judge came in, Judge Martinez was a little lady with keen eyes and a reputation for being even more discerning. As the courtroom held its breath, she went over the first filings. She looked straight at my father and said, "I want to make something very clear before we begin. The data that I have previously seen is really concerning. It is not just careless, but illegal to leave a young kid alone at a public transit hub. Mr. Hartley, you should know that criminal charges could be suggested based on the outcome of these proceedings." Dad's attorney got up fast. "My client, Your Honor, insists that there was a miscommunication. Judge Martinez's voice may have frozen flames if it had been misinterpreted. Counselor, there's security footage. Clearly captured video of your client leaving as his daughter. 14 screams for him. It's not a miscommunication. Abandonment is what it is." With mechanical precision, the hearing went forward. We provided proof of years of maltreatment, financial deception, and abandonment. They attempted to portray me as distressed, Grandma as cunning, and the whole circumstance as exaggerated. And then, with equal measure of fear and anticipation, came the time. It's my time to talk. My legs were more stable than I had anticipated. As I stood eyeing me, there was silence in the courtroom. I said, "Your Honor," my voice clean from Miss Catherine's instruction. "I was at the train station for 6 hours. I was wondering what I had done wrong for 6 hours. I spent 6 hours seeing families come and go, but mine had discarded me. For the first time, I turned to face my father. He remembered me. He didn't get it wrong. He decided. He put his new family and money before his daughter. And now that his decision has repercussions, he tries to portray himself as the victim." Dad's cheeks flushed. His attorney pulled him back down as he began to rise. "I'm not interested in his money." I went on. "I want my independence. Instead of seeing me as a potential source of income, I want to live with someone who sees me as a person. When I become inconvenient, I want to be able to believe that I won't be left behind again." Judge Martinez gave a slow nod. "I'm grateful, Miss Hartley. For today, I've heard enough. Mrs. Helen Hartley is given temporary custody while the case is thoroughly reviewed. It is mandated that you only communicate with your daughter under supervision. Mr. Hartley, financial accounts will be blocked until the claims of fraud are looked into." Like thunder, the gavel descended. I glanced back, meeting his eyes with a steadiness I had never experienced before as we left the courtroom, and Dad yelled, "This isn't over. You're ruining everything. Sharon, the kids, everyone is suffering because of your selfishness. Warm and solid." Grandma's hand found mine, and she said, "No, Dad, everyone is suffering because of yours. Come, sweetheart, behind us. We have a future to construct." Sharon's harsh, accusatory voice was audible to me. "You are to blame for this. She was worth millions. You stated. It would be simple. You claimed. Like mine. Their ideal family was disintegrating. The difference was that I had someone who really cared about me to help me get back on my feet. All Dad had was the devastation he had made. Protesters were already gathering as our vehicle left the courtroom. Some stood with placards, advocating for children's rights and parental accountability in support of us. Others backed him, condemning avaricious family members and the ruin of families. Mr. Chin cautioned, "It's going to get worse before it gets better." "Good," I murmured, shocking myself and everyone else. The storm had passed, and I no longer feared the rain. Let it get worse. Let everyone see what he really is. The morning our tale went viral throughout the country. Grandma was in the war room with 3 laptop streamers and newspapers when I woke up. Her face showed grim satisfaction. She pushed a tablet over to me and added, It was picked up by the New York Times. The abandonment at Central Station. A father's betrayal becomes a legal reckoning. The headline said, "That poor child was terrified." I've seen runaways at stations before. This wasn't that. This was a girl who'd been thrown away like garbage. They'd interviewed other passengers from that day. Margaret, the woman who'd sat with me, had given a scathing account. "My daughter has always been troubled," he replied, his voice cracking with trained emotion. By midday, his attorneys had set up a news conference on the courtroom steps, and I watched from the protection of my grandmother's study as he played the victim, Sharon, wiping at his dry tears. Her mother has a family history of mental health problems. She went away when I tried to obtain professional assistance for her. And my mother took advantage of the situation to turn her against me, Grandma said. Bastard. But there were flaws in his performance. He stammered when a reporter questioned him about why he had visited a resort right away. Sharon lost her temper when someone else inquired about the trust money, and she raised her hand to his arm in warning. Then the last blow was delivered. A Washington Post reporter was on her feet. "According to the credit records we have, Mr. Hartley, you opened many cards in your daughter's name. Could you elaborate?" Before the broadcast transitioned to commercial break, Dad's expression was captured. Indignation is a lousy cloak for panic. Mr. Chen was overjoyed. He recently acknowledged making an unjustified effort at institutionalization. That will not look well in court. The complete custody hearing was scheduled to take place the following week. However, the depositions came first. Dad's attorneys tried everything to break me over 3 days of torturous interrogation in a sterile conference room. "You have been diagnosed with depression. Isn't that right?" "Yes. After my parents' divorce and my mother's alcoholism. It's well managed with therapy." "And you've had behavioral issues at school?" said Mr. Fitzgerald, Dad's lead lawyer. "When I had to walk 3 miles because my dad forgot to bring me up? I once had detention for being late. Each inquiry is intended to portray me as unstable, disturbed, and unworthy of pity. However, I was well prepared by Ms. Rodriguez. You look really well coached," Fitzgerald said. "I've learned how to defend myself." I said, "That is what abandonment will do." Even Grandma was surprised by what the financial probe turned up. Not all credit cards in my name had been stolen by Dad. He had been embezzling money from the accounts my grandpa had established for my schooling. He believed that little quantities would go unnoticed. Around $200. 000 spread throughout 3 years. Mr. Chen muttered. "Federal charges. Wire fraud is what this is." The actual shock, however, came from a surprising place. Sharon's 8-year-old son, Connor, has been using his tablet to create a journal. Child Services was notified by his instructor about his recent actions, and they subpoenaed it. The entries were terrible. October 3. "We're wealthy now," Mom adds. But Mike wouldn't call him Dad. Constantly yells for money. Mike said on November 15th that Mia will shortly be leaving for good. Mom grinned. I long for the days when we were alone. Mom's arm was injured by Mike on November 18. She claimed to have fallen. She stayed upright. Child Services initiated its own inquiry. Sharon's picture of the ideal family was not just crumbling, it was being destroyed. Dad made one more desperate move the day before the custody court. My mother showed up to Grandma's estate's gates. Maybe for the first time in months. "See my daughter? Please." She claimed to be sober, yet she mumbled a little. Grandma took care of it herself. She greeted my mother at the gates. And I observed from a window above, in the 6 weeks after her father left her, "Linda, you have not once inquired about Mia." I've been trying to gather myself. I'd want custody. Her mother is me. You're an alcoholic who was unaware that her daughter had been gone for 3 days. You're only here because Richard promised you money in exchange for your assistance. My mom's expression darkened. You're keeping her away from me. I'll tell them. Abduction. Give it a try. Coolly, Grandma said. Every wine bottle and every night out is documented for me. Every time you were too inebriated to be a parent. Mia had to take care of herself. I'll have you arrested for trespassing if you don't leave immediately. Before leaving, my mother yelled that we would regret this, and that she would have what was rightfully hers. I was unable to eat that evening. Both of my parents were attempting to take advantage of me, and the stress of the upcoming court was too much to handle. At 2:00 a.m., Grandma discovered me at the library, reading the ancient diaries of my grandpa. As she settled next to me with her own cup of tea, she questioned. Can't sleep either, I showed her the page and said. I found the entry from when I was born, he said. Mia arrived today, perfect and innocent. I pray the world is kind to her. He loved you very much more than my actual parents. Apparently, biology doesn't determine love. Sweetheart, real family is chosen through actions, not just blood. The custody hearing was met with a media circus, photographers, reporters, and even demonstrators on both sides. Justice for Mia t-shirts has been manufactured. Another person's family values matter. Placards included my father's photo. The atmosphere in the courtroom was oppressive. Dad's suit was loose since he had dropped weight. 2 rows behind him was Sharon. Their united front had fallen apart because they had been battling in public for so long. Her kids were conspicuously missing. The court was called to order by Judge Martinez. I've looked over a lot of the evidence in this case. Financial fraud, the attempted exploitation of a minor's trust fund, and child abandonment. Mr. Hartley, do you have anything to say before we go forward? I briefly saw something in Dad's eyes as he stood. Feel remorse or just regret being discovered? I'm not flawless. He started. However, I am her father. That should count for something, doesn't it? Judge Martinez retorted that fatherhood is more than biology. It's appearing. It's defense. It is prioritizing the needs of your kid before your own. Is it true that you have done any of it? The quiet dragged on until it broke. Then Dad lost it. She has $10 million. $10 million. And while she lives like a princess, I'm meant to suffer. I inherited the money from my father. In fact, Mr. Chen stood with ease. It's inherited by Mia. Your father made it very plain. Additionally, as you are to blame for your difficulties, debt from gambling, bad investments, and living over your means. Even if you have $5 million, Dad didn't turn to me like that. At last, his mask came off entirely. That brat is ungrateful. You were raised by me. I'm worthy of Mr. Hartley. Like thunder. Judge Martinez's gavel broke. You will be held in contempt if you have another outburst. However, the harm had already been done. The true him had been seen by everybody. The next morning's Washington Post story included a picture that will always torment my father. As I sat silently next to my grandma, his face twisted in anger, and he pointed at me. The exposed father in the headline reveals his actual nature and the custody dispute. The public's reaction was harsh and quick. His business associates broke off communication, citing irreconcilable differences and undiscovered financial malfeasance. Sharon filed for separation. Uncle Keith, Richard's own brother, even issued a statement separating himself from Richard's unforgivable behavior. Dad wasn't done battling. However, rarely are cornered animals. 2 nights after the hearing, at 3 a.m, the call came in. Not to my cell phone. He could only call Grandma's landline since he was legally prohibited from calling me. You old witch. You are poison. He spoke with a drunken slur. You've ruined everything. My life. My marriage. And my reputation. Grandma had it recorded on the speaker. You're breaking the restraining order. Richard, your restraining order doesn't concern me at all. My kid turns against me because of you. You constantly make me dance with your money, dangling it like a carrot. I didn't force you to do anything. You had all the options. I'll destroy both of you. Do you believe you have won? I have knowledge of Dad's company and the true source of that funding. Island. The line died. Mr. Chin promptly submitted the tape to the court, adding restraining order violation to Dad's mounting legal issues. But there was more to his threat. A shady tabloid published an article the next day. Wealth acquired via illicit means. It was quickly demonstrated to be rubbish. However, Dad made a lot of outrageous claims regarding tax fraud and money laundering in an exclusive interview. He is in a grave situation. These are the thrashings of a drowning man. Mr. Chin reassured us. After a quick investigation that yielded no results, the IRS and FBI focused on Dad's personal financial offenses. Nobody failed to see the irony. It was around this time that I went back to school. Grandma said that I needed normalcy. But with everyone knowing my tale, normalcy was unattainable. I was viewed like a star by some children, like a victim by others, and like a traitor to family values by those whose parents supported my father. My closest friend Emma turned into a shield for me. She said, "Anyone who gives you grief answers to me." And somehow, even though she was just 5'2", she managed to make it stick. I spoke about the incident in public for the first time at school. I was invited to speak at an assembly by the principal on identifying abuse and getting assistance. Grandma gave me complete control over it. I said the truth in front of 300 pupils. With my voice more steady than my hands, I continued. Being abandoned isn't always as obvious as being left at a train station. It might be gradual at times. A parent who no longer inquires about your day, who fails to remember your birthday, and who views you as a nuisance or, worse, as a resource to be used for personal gain. It isn't love when someone is meant to adore you, but instead makes you feel unworthy. It's not family. If someone puts you in danger when they should be protecting you, you're worthy of better. Better is what we all deserve. 3 minutes were allotted for the standing ovation. 17 pupils later spoke with the counselor about their personal circumstances. It was the most influential assembly we've ever had. According to the principal, of course, Dad heard about it. Now everything was open to the public. The next day, inebriated and furious, he came to the school and insisted on seeing me. He was forcibly stopped while the security guy, who was also a grandpa, called the police. Numerous student phones caught the arrest. By nightfall, the video had gone viral on all platforms, making number Dad of There a hot hashtag. Meanwhile, Sharon was battling her own issues. When she found out her father had concealed riches, the split had become acrimonious. He had hidden money in offshore accounts that he had stolen from me. She wanted a portion of the fictitious profits. Grandma watched the TV footage of their legal struggle and exclaimed, "Let them tear each other apart." However, Brittany and Connor were collateral damage. I felt bad for them. They hadn't asked for any of this. You could reach out. Doctor, Reeves said during therapy. Child Services took them from Sharon's custody and placed them with Sharon's sister in another state after Connor's diary entry about Dad hurting. Sharon sparked an investigation that found a pattern of domestic violence. I wrote them each a simple, kind letter to let them know they're not alone, telling them that they shouldn't blame themselves for their situation. Even though adults can make bad decisions, Brittany never replied. But Connor sent back a drawing of a train station with a girl leaving. The criminal trial was set and Dad tried one last manipulation. A suicide attempt. Or rather, a gesture meant to resemble one. And was charged with fraud, identity theft, child abandonment, and violating a restraining order. The federal charges alone carrying a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. I still have it. Strong and unafraid. The prosecutor, Miss Davies, was a force of nature. He took just enough pills to necessitate hospitalization, but not enough to cause actual harm. The timing was suspicious. Right before a crucial hearing. Some people felt sympathy, but I didn't. It's another manipulation. I told Dr. Reeves that he wasn't sorry for what he did, but that he was sorry he got caught. That's a very mature understanding. He responded in a very painful way. I have a daughter your age. She told me what he did. There's no explanation. No justification. We're going to make sure he can never abuse you again. The trial was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. She had taken the matter personally after seeing the train station tape. I wore the navy dress Grandma bought me. Professional. Respectful. But not trying too hard. And my hands shook as I sewed the buttons on the criminal trial, which started on a Thursday morning that felt like the end of the world. Dad's lawyers tried to get a plea deal, but Miss Davies refused anything less than admission of guilt and serious prison time. Grandma told me, "You don't have to go. You've already given your deposition. I need to see this through." The courthouse was a zoo, lined with supporters, members of the national media, true crime podcasters, and even a documentary crew that had been following the case. Dozens of people wearing Justice for Mia shirts were there, and many of them parents who had been appalled by my story. Miss Davies began with the security footage, and the courtroom watched in silence as one 4-year-old me called after my father. As I sat alone, hour after hour, until I finally broke down crying on that cold bench. Dad looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, with no expensive suit to hide behind. No Sharon to perform for. Just him. His public defender. His money long gone to pay debts. And the weight of evidence against him, the evidence, was overwhelming. This is not a case about money. Miss Davies said, as several jurors wiped their eyes. This is about a father who viewed his daughter as an asset, to exploit, not a child to protect. And he abandoned her like a broken toy when he couldn't legally access her inheritance. Financial records demonstrating systematic theft. Text messages in which he talked about relieving Sharon of the burden. The credit cards in my name that were charged for their vacation. And Sharon's jewelry, the one they took while I was sitting there. And then my testimony. On the second day, I took the stand. And Dad refused to look at me. Instead, focusing on the table, Miss Davies gently asked, "Can you tell us about November 18th? I told them everything, including the quiet car ride, the bewilderment, the realization that I was being abandoned when I saw Sharon and her children, the hunger, the fear, the good stranger who bought me food, and the relief I felt upon hearing Grandma's voice." "Were you afraid?" Miss Davies inquired. I was scared. I thought I might die. I thought no one would know what happened to me. "Did your father ever call to check on you?" "No." He posted pictures of his vacation instead. Dad's lawyer attempted to portray me as a troubled teen, but it was unsuccessful. All of the accusations were supported by documentation. The star witness, surprisingly, was Sharon, who had arranged immunity in exchange for her testimony and buried him. He claimed she was worth $10 million, and she testified without even feigning regret that once he had control of it, we'd be set for life. My grades were good. My teachers praised me. And my only problem was having him as a father. The abandonment was planned weeks in advance. I thought he was taking her to a boarding school, but I didn't realize he was simply going to leave her. Judge Coleman had to threaten to clear the gallery because he wanted her institutionalized or so traumatized that she would be easy to control when she turned 18. Miss Davies pressed him. Her testimony was bad enough, but we had text messages demonstrating she knew it was a lie. On day 4, Dad finally took the stand. Against his lawyer's advice, because his ego insisted he tell his side. It was a disaster. At one point, he added, "I raised her, so she owes me. You took money out of her trust and used it to pay for everything." Miss Davies cut me off. "I should have had that money. The son is me. Together with my father, I founded the business. When your father started the business, you were 12 years old. Specifically, what did you construct?" From then he went into a spiral. Blamed everyone except himself, including Sharon, myself, and his grandmother. He really stated, "She looks fine. I don't see what the big deal is." After seeing the video of the train station, one jury gasped aloud. It took 2 hours to get a judgment. I'm guilty of everything. The next month was set aside for the sentence. 25 years was the limit. 8 was the minimum. Dad did all he could in the weeks between the trial and sentence. He sent me mails using his lawyer's restricted account. In a jailhouse interview, he asserted his innocence. When he unintentionally confessed to crimes for which he had not even been prosecuted, it only became worse. He asked his brother to attempt to reason with Grandma. She wouldn't even answer the phone. I provided a victim impact statement on the day of sentence. Before I finally discovered the words that were true, I had written it 17 times. Each iteration becoming more furious than the previous. I murmured, glancing at him one more time. "You were supposed to protect me. That is a parent's most fundamental responsibility. Make sure your youngster is safe. You failed at more than that. The threat I needed to be protected against was you." Years passed as I tried to figure out what went wrong. Why you couldn't love me the way you loved Sharon's children. And why I wasn't good enough. But now I get it. None of us were ever loved by you. All you love is yourself. I want retribution. But I'm not requesting the harshest penalty. There is another one, 4-year-old girl out there, whose father views her more as a resource than a daughter. Which is why I'm requesting it. And perhaps he will reconsider once he witnesses what happened to you. You released me. Yet you left me at that train station. I discovered true love, family, and support. Next year, I will be attending college. Yale, early admittance. To aid youngsters like myself. I want to get a legal education. I'll adopt my grandfather's name. Not Hartley, but Mia Blackwood. You just shown your true self, even if you believed you were discarding me. And now everyone is aware. Judge Coleman interrupted Dad as he opened his mouth to reply. I have supervised a lot of cases in my tenure, Mr. Hartley, but I have seldom seen such deliberate abuse of a kid. You left your daughter behind to pursue money that never belonged to you. You attempted to take her future, her identity, and her security. I gave you an 18-year sentence in federal prison, with no chance of early release for the first 10 years. You won't speak to your daughter again once you're released unless she asks you to. Interest will be applied to the repayment of any stolen money. For the last time. The gavel descended. Dad glanced back once as they dragged him away. We looked at each other across the courtroom. I thought I would feel something. I felt nothing. Maybe even pity or sadness. He was an unknown individual who just so happened to have my DNA. The audience applauded outside the courtroom, while reporters yelled questions. My sole focus was on Granny, who was standing beside the vehicle. She was crying uncontrollably. She held me and murmured, "I'm proud of you. Your grandfather would be too." Sharon vanished after the trial. There was a rumor that she had departed the country. Her children were taken in by their uncle and aunt. who seemed to be decent people. Despite everything, I stayed in contact with Connor, who developed into a good young man. After the trial, my mother became sober, really sober. Sometimes we have coffee. It's not precisely a relationship, but it's also not nothing. She is aware that she is no longer able to be my parent, but maybe she can still be a part of my life. On my 18th birthday, I received the trust money, although I seldom touched it. I learned from Grandma that money was a tool, not an end in itself. I started a foundation for abandoned children. Use some for treatment, and utilize some for college. The remainder is growing and waiting for me to decide precisely what I want to make with it. On that November day, precisely 5 years after that terrible day, I went back to the train station. The location remains the same. However, the bench has been changed with newer, purportedly more comfortable models. I wasn't by myself. Beside me sat Connor, who is now 13 years old. He had requested to witness the scene and learn the tale that had changed our lives. "Did you really spend 6 hours here?" he inquired. 6 hours and 14 minutes. I can tell, since I kept an eye on the clock and saw each minute pass. Still maintaining perfect time. I gestured toward the ancient clock tower. He said, "I'm sorry my mom was involved. Your parents' decisions are not your responsibility. Believe me, I had to learn it the hard way." Sitting in cozy stillness, we saw tourists hurrying by, families getting back together, others bidding farewell, and regular people going about their daily lives as usual. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd come back?" Mia Connor inquired. I considered what may have occurred if he had changed his mind. For the first time in years, I gave it some serious consideration. I would have accompanied him. I confessed that I was eager for his affection. Anything would have been acceptable to me. The true tragedy would have been to spend my whole life pleading for affection from someone who couldn't provide it. It buzzed on my phone. Grandma sent a message. "Dinner at 7 o'clock. Created your ideal house. A true home. With a person who valued me for who I was rather than what I was worth. Come on," Connor said, rising and supporting my back. Grandma had given me a fashionable one, but I kept the old, worn one in my wardrobe as a memory. Come on. Let's get home. I once looked back at the bench as we made our way to the exit. The girl who had sat there, alone, scared, and deserted. She wasn't all of me, but she was a part of me. She was stronger and more like me than I could have ever been if my father had been the father I needed. And she was the cocoon I had emerged from. That day at the station, he was correct about one thing. I figured it out when I was old enough. Would you have the fortitude to rebuild without someone who was meant to protect you, putting money above your safety? Thank you for viewing. Be careful. I wish you luck.